Again, Mishka came to the playground late at night. The sun had already set behind the native 9-story building. The yard was flooded with darkness. It was quiet all around. Only somewhere in the distance a truck rumbled and a dog barked. The air smelled of mown grass, a piece of trampled lawn, a makeshift gate with a leaky net and a couple of benches instead of bleachers. It didn't look too much like the football stadiums that Mishka had seen on TV, but it was still impressive. There was some kind of magic here. It was drawn here. When the game started, the rest of the world seemed to cease to exist. All the troubles disappeared from my head. My parents' quarrels, school were forgotten. Even the sores passed. Mishka loved this place, but he was very rarely taken to the game. He threw an old darn ball on the lawn, advanced with it to the goal, beating invisible opponents. And with all his strength he threw it under the crossbar. The net fluttered. Mishka jumped up, waved his arms, celebrating the goal scored, but immediately looked around. Does anyone see? The local boys laughed at him anyway, came up with offensive nicknames and could only take on the team if there was no one to put on the gate. And with each missed goal, Mishka's nicknames were added. But no one was watching him now. The windows were slowly going out in the houses. The entrance doors were slamming less and less. That's why Mishka loved this time. There are practically no people on the street. Everyone is sitting in their apartments and getting ready for bed. And the playground belongs only to him. And no one will drive him away from here. He had knocked over 50 heads when he heard the dog again. Now she was barking much closer, somewhere behind the house, and not just barking, but tearing her throat. As if she had gone completely berserk, Mishka even imagined a bared mouth, sharp teeth, saliva dripping on the ground. He shivered. He didn't want to run into a rabid dog at all. But even more, I didn't want to go home and get a slap on the neck from the folder just for the fact that he, Mishka, was born one day. I didn't want to look at my mother's tears, at her bruises. I didn't want to see how. The barking stopped abruptly. The dog screamed. And the next moment the sound of breaking bones echoed through the yard. It seemed to Mishka that his own bones cracked. It was so loud and creepy. He picked up the ball and began to turn his head around, peering into the darkness. Half of the lamps at the entrances were no longer lit. The wind drove small debris along the asphalt. Birds were busy and a bird feeder ranged on a birch tree. And near the corner of the house stood a tall man and looked directly at the bear. My legs gave out. In the silence that followed, Mishka heard only the pounding of his own heart. He suddenly realized that here, in the cone of lamplight on the landing, it was impossible not to notice him. Bear automatically took a step back, and the stranger did the same. Like an incorrect, inhibited reflection, glass broke on one of the upper floors. There was a scream, and Mishka shuddered. Far away, on the highway, a siren howled and immediately subsided. Something was happening. Another one appeared next to the stranger. He, too, was looking at the bear and strangely stretched out his hands in front of him, as if he was squeezing the air, or holding an invisible ball. Mishka's throat was dry. Sweat broke out on his forehead. He rushed towards his entrance, but noticed dark silhouettes on the landing. They seemed to have grown into the ground. Mannequins hiding outside the lamplight, waiting, not adieu. Hearing a voice behind him, Mishka screamed. The voice was distorted and real, as if the person had not yet learned how to use it. Mishka turned around and saw Suryoga, a boy a year older, with whom he sometimes played here. He was one of the few who treated him normally. Eserig, what are you doing? Suryoga was standing a few steps away from the football field, turning his head in different directions and did not dare to enter the spot of light. He gently stretched out his leg out of the darkness and immediately pulled it back. And then I tried again. Earrings. Bye. Jita. Bye. And then bye. 100. Mishka didn't have enough air. The wind ruffled the untrimmed bangs, blew cool, but brought with it terrible smells. The smells of fresh blood, rotten meat and burning landfill. The smells of a new earring. Say, egg. Bye. Jita. I don't. Chew. The creature jerked forward, collapsed to the ground, roared and crawled back into the darkness. It quickly got to its feet and began to approach the light with small steps. Mishka saw a smile on Nisariga's face. and a wave of goosebumps rose up his back. "Get off me, Ollie." "Enya," the creature replied. Mishka launched a ball at him, then picked up a stone from the ground and threw it directly at the creature's head. It staggered back a couple of meters and froze in place, and then clumsily copied the movement of the bear. It crouched down and threw a non-existent stone at him, and again, and more. It was like repeating the strangest exercise in physical education class. "Yes, leave you alone." Mishka could no longer hold back his tears. Screams and strange, wrong voices could be heard from the darkness that covered the area. Alarms were going off. Moving away from the creature, Mishka pressed his back against the lantern. Buried in the saving light, mosquitoes buzzed right under the lamp. A fly fluttered in the web. Shadows were rising around a patch of football field. What was pretending to be Sarega found a real stone on the ground and threw it towards Mishka with incredible force. A lamppost rattled. The creature stared ahead for a few seconds, and then raised its head higher, to a glass ball that generates electric light, and the bear turned cold. The shadows moved. A column of black smoke was rising from behind the houses. Mishka, sobbing, slid to the ground and covered his head with his hands. The creature managed to break the lantern on the third attempt. Sunflowers. Lev put the bike on the running board and looked around. Ahead, about 2 kilometers away, a young aspen tree was visible. A field road led to it. 2 strips of grass crushed by wheels and a long mohawk between them, from the same grass, only brazenly sticking up. The rest of the space was occupied by blooming sunflowers lined up in straight rows, like skinny soldiers in yellow-green sombreros. Above the sunflowers, the sky was piercing blue with a blinding white hole of the sun. Leva covered the glaring smartphone screen with his palm and peered at the icons. There was no mobile network. There was no damn net here either. Pavlenty had deceived him. Lev whispered a few kind words to his friend, then to his grandmother's village, then to his parents, who sent their son to the wilderness without communication, and then stopped. He saw movement out of the corner of his eye. There was someone in the sunflowers. The village stories that his grandmother used to scare him with immediately surfaced in his memory. About midday girls and glades, poking into a bag and taking away stupid children who decided to steal something from someone else's garden. For example, a sunflower. "I'm 17, Lever reminded himself. "I'm a swimmer. I'll carry whoever you want on my shoulder." He peered at the waving sunflowers and felt his cheeks suddenly burn. The sun had nothing to do with it. Between the tall stems he could see a girl's head, shoulder and back, naked. "Hey." After a short thought, Leva called. "Hey, what are you doing there?" The sunflowers froze, then the movement resumed, and the girl went out on the road. She certainly wasn't naked. The yellow-green sundress revealed the shoulders, arms and part of the back, but completely covered the chest and legs. The girl had a strange hairstyle, lots of bunches of different lengths and thicknesses, grabbed by yellow elastic bands, and a very freckled face. Cute to the point of impossibility, she was barely shoulder height to the not-too-tall Lev. "I know you," the girl said. "You are a lion, the grandson of Antonia Safonova, from Moscow. Actually from Dubna, and I don't remember you." "Yes, I'm also a visitor," the girl said, "but from where?" She forgot to clarify or did not want to. "My name is Paul," Leva smiled. The name was absolutely right for the girl, as well as a funny hairstyle, as well as huge, violet black eyes under red eyelashes. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "Are you catching a net too?" "No," Polya drawled. "There is no network here. We have to go over there." She waved her hand in the direction of the forest. "There is a hillock there. Here it receives a mobile phone, and I'm just taking a selfie. I love sunflowers." "Like Van Gogh," Leva flashed. "Probably," Polya agreed. "Why do you need a network?" Lev shrugged his shoulders. "It's strange that someone needs to explain why a person with a smartphone needs a connection." "Check the mail," he said. "I correspond with a black girl from America there. She fell in love with me. Along the way, she can't go a day without letters. That's how we talk on Skype, but it's not easy here with Skype." He sighed in frustration. "I see," said Polya. who seemed to believe Levin's awkward lies unconditionally. Then let's go. I'll take you to the hill. Maybe your Skype will work there. Leva reached for the bike, but Polya shook her head. Leave it. We'll go through the sunflowers, so it's closer. You'll suffer with greatness. Won't they steal it? Who? The girl was surprised. The boys from the village. No, they won't come here. Why? They are afraid of noon. Aren't you afraid? I'm not a child anymore. I'm a girl. She won't touch me. Love swallowed the question about what it means already a girl. I guessed it. Her cheeks burned again. Let's go, Polya said and took Leva's hand. Her brush was narrow, dry and cool. Very, very pleasant. They went. Apparently, Polya knew the path. The sunflowers did not hit the shoulders with their heavy heads, did not scratch with rough stems and leaves, but seemed to make way for the girl. Lev squinted at her with his eye, and something sweetly stirred inside him. He was already scolding himself for a stupid invention about a black woman. In love and was thinking about what to spin afield after he checked his mail. Probably. It should be said that the American woman found herself a hefty basketball player and decided to stop contacts with a Russian acquaintance. Yes, that would be best. Polya suddenly stopped and sat down. She pulled Levin's hand and hissed faintly hide and quiet. Leva sat down awkwardly. What is going on? Quiet you, midday. The girl pointed her finger somewhere to the left. There was indeed some kind of noise. I think someone was humming softly. The words were indistinct, but the voice was definitely female. So she won't touch you, Leva said, entering into an incomprehensible yet, but extremely exciting game. I'm not here. And you haven't been with a girl yet, have you, Faye? What are you? Yes, many times. Well, then Norm, said Polya and began to rise. Leva yanked her back. She sat down. She didn't laugh, didn't make a contemptuous grimace. Did you look serious and gentle? You sure you weren't? Yes, exactly. All right, Polya said. At the same moment, her arms jerkily lengthened, becoming thick green ropes that wrapped around Leva's torso. Golden whiskers or roots shot out from under the hem, a whole armful, and swaddled her legs. Funny tufts of hair from a hairstyle turned into little straw men. They jumped to the ground, quickly ran up to Leva, climbed on clothes, and crawled into her mouth, muffling the scream that had not had time to be born. The violet black eyes widened enormously and became faceted, like an insect's. The freckles on the skin moved, darkening and turning into scales of pot-bellied sunflower seeds. Out of the hot midday haze, the cloth of a huge bag was woven and fell on Leva, heavy, as if leaden. Asterisk. Valentina finished the last verse just when she came out of the sunflowers on the road. She was in a great mood. She received the phone on the hill without the usual interference, and she and her husband managed to talk to the last penny on the bill. Pashka said that he was returning from the watch ahead of schedule, and it was wonderful. Ahead, near the road, something metallic flashed. A bicycle. I wonder whose? The kids didn't come here, and the adults preferred more solid transport and certainly didn't leave it in the middle of the field. Valentina put her palm to her forehead with the boat, protecting herself from the sun. But there was no bike anymore. Only the sunflowers swayed, as if a dog had run between them. I imagined it because of the heat, Valentina decided and sang again. Creatures, I didn't die right away. That's probably why I'm here. I'm talking to you. I do what I do. Once I had a name that I forgot, and a profession. I worked as a journalist and often flew around the country. Do you know how scary it is to be in a falling plane? I doubt. Plane crashes rarely leave witnesses. I was flying home. I was returning from the Kuril Islands, whose inhabitants were battered by an earthquake. Sitting in an armchair, he was sketching a draft of an article. There was not enough space for everyone. Refugees were flying in the N-72, except for me and my colleagues. One man sat on a stool. I don't remember where it came from. 3 hours without incident. The ground had already appeared under the wings of the plane, when suddenly I noticed that an oily liquid was flowing through the glass of the porthole. This was noticed by other passengers. They panicked when the co-pilot and flight engineer appeared in the cabin, who opened some panel and began to tinker with the winch. His hands were shaking. We all wanted to know what was going on. The hydraulics flew. The pilot replied, "We can't release the landing gear. We'll have to do it manually." He told us to fasten our seatbelts, rest our feet on the front seats, and cover our heads with our hands. He said everything would be fine. I immediately realized that it wasn't the chassis. Not just the chassis. The plane was falling. It was obvious. One of the refugees began to sob loudly. It was very scary. I tied myself with a belt, stuck my knees into the back of the front seat, and waited for death. There was a man running around the cabin who didn't get a seat. He shouted that he had nothing to fasten himself with, then fell on his knees in front of some woman and hugged her legs. A beautiful death, if you forget that there is nothing but ugliness in it. What was I thinking when the plane crashed? Not just about death. I was thinking about what else I could do to save myself. Tightened the belt. I shoved the bag under the chair so that it wouldn't fall on my head if the plane flipped onto the roof. I was carrying several cans of red caviar from the smokes. The preparations for the fall did not get rid of the fear. A nasty chill was streaming down my spine, and my face was covered with perspiration. The sky no longer held our unguided plane. The N-72 was falling to the ground. The feather bed 1,000 meters. I was rapidly melting. I wanted to pray, but I didn't know any prayers, so I just kept repeating to myself, please, please, please. Not long ago I believed that iron birds could fly, and now I scolded myself for it. I stared out the porthole. Sometimes something flashed in it, but I couldn't make out what. The plane was shaking. It tilted heavily and fell, and fell, and fell. The passengers' screams made their ears pop. I screamed along with everyone. And then there was silence. I pressed my head to my knees so as not to see the pale, frightened faces. Fear turned them into masks. The pilot reached the airfield, but we did not land, but fell on the runway. A minute before the impact, I looked up and saw an ugly shadow on the right wing. A black thing stuck to the plane. I heard a whistle. The seatbelts dug into my stomach, and that's when the fear went away. I don't know why. Probably. There is simply no time left for it. The terrible impact broke the wing consoles and crushed the fuel tanks. The rear wheel struts pierced the interior. One of them lifted me off the floor along with the chair, but she didn't. The skin was torn. Rivets and bolts whistled around. The pilot's cabin flattened. Metal struck concrete like a match on a box, and the dead plane flared up like a torch. I was still alive when 4 tons of kerosene exploded. It flashed dazzlingly. The roar swallowed me up. When it died down, I got out of the wreckage and went forward. I turned around and saw a charred dead man sitting in a chair. I was still burning, but I no longer felt pain. I lay down on the black sand and rolled around until I knocked down the flame. Then he went on. It became dark. The reflections of the fire were absorbed into the pitch darkness. A melted seat belt was glued to my chest. I couldn't tear it off. He started shouting, but no one answered. I was walking a long, almost endless road that I walked alone. I know I was dead, but I didn't know what to do about it. I wanted to talk to someone, but I didn't have someone to talk to. I was thinking about why the burned dead man stayed in the chair and didn't come with me. I was thinking, why in a world where every 5 or 6 seconds a plane lands successfully? In a world where more than 3 million passengers survive every day, why in this world did I draw the black mark? I was thinking about a Peruvian schoolgirl, the only survivor of a burning plane crash in the Amazon jungle. She got out of the wreckage and walked along the river for 9 days. To her salvation, the fisherman's camp. I was thinking about where I was going. And then a black creature appeared before my eyes, which I saw on the wing of the plane shortly before the impact. And others, they flashed in the window when the N-72 was losing altitude. Terrible creatures. I see them to this day. I'm one of them.